And I'll also turn off my camera so I can share these slides and don't run out of bandwidth.
So again, good evening. We're going to start with kind of a formal introduction of ourselves. My name is Ismail El-Amin. I go by Ish, originally from Chicago. Bounced around, did some IT traveling, consulting after college, and made my way back to Chicago. I've got a wife and children, 3 kids that we're raising. We live in the Beverly area. And part of the reason PiggyBack was started, we've got 3 children that we drop off in 3 different locations every day. And my wife and I both have vehicles, we both have 9 to 5, we both have social lives, and it's kind of like, we can use some help with the scheduling, with you know, the network of drivers that we have, my brothers, my sisters, my in-laws, like friends, family, a lot of different people. We lean on them a lot to get things done. And not everybody has that network, and we're really trying to solve that for parents that can take advantage of it. College, Princeton University, where I met Donald, electrical engineering major as well as football. Always been involved in some type of sport, some type of extracurricular activity. And a lot of those opportunities stemmed from the ability to have transportation to get to and from those activities. The magnet school that I went to in high school, it was a 90-minute commute on the bus, CTA, and train. And having friends that could give me a ride to and fro, if it was nighttime, if it was, you know, a sketchy situation, that was all part of my education growing up. So the carpool concept kind of shaped who I turned out to be as a professional, as an adult. And that's kind of how I got involved with the idea a couple of years ago, 3.5 years ago. That's my intro. Co-founder Donald, and introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm Donald Scott II. As Ish mentioned, you know, we've probably been classmates, teammates, business partner, co-workers. But mostly, I think that we've always helped each other innovate and think through more creative ideas. And so the concept of PiggyBack Network is a function of where we are in life today. I also have 3 kids, trying to get them around to and from sports, school, and also I traveled a bit for work. All of that led to these discussions on how do we keep them engaged, but also, you know, from a volunteering perspective, we were constantly talking about what equity looks like and how opportunity presents itself in the current space, and then how that makes people's futures either better or worse today. And so, you know, the idea of transportation as a blocker to equitable experiences, and then how we may be able to affect that and be innovative but also disruptive, is where PiggyBack Network comes from. And so, you know, we appreciate you all joining us, and feel free to take notes, feel free to ask questions throughout. And, you know, what we'll basically be looking for is commitment to support, whether it's financially or by signing up as a PiggyBack Network member, and then also telling, you know, your friends, family, and network about the work that we're trying to do.
Thank you. So we've got the slides organized in a deck for us, kind of what we call our pitch deck, where we talk about the business, and that's what we're going to start off with here. And we will have a segment where we walk through the physical website, what the look of it is, and also the website for the investment portal. So there will be an opportunity to kind of walk through and get a sense of what that looks like as well. So as we mentioned before, we're both parents, both actively involved in volunteering at the children's schools and after school activities. The problem statement that we saw from the time that we've had the children and tried to, you know, involve ourselves in their educational as well as extracurricular lives, we see that there's a lack of access to safe, reliable, affordable youth transportation as it pertains to each community. Some may be able to afford, you know, private driver, private end-to-end transportation, the rental vans, the different Uber methods and things like that, but it doesn't work for all environments and all zip codes. And we see those pockets missing out. They don't have access to the same schools, the same extracurricular activities. And we're also seeing that many people are driving overlapping routes on a regular basis, but they don't take the opportunity to get to know the other parents within that network, within the school, within the sports league, within the dance studios. We're just high and by, waving the parking lot, and we're off to do the next thing. We're too busy to stop and hold a conversation, exchange energies, find out, what do you do when you're not here stuck in the parent room and things like that. We just don't have the energy. We don't have the time. We're triple booked. We're thinking about the next thing that's going on. And we don't really stop as parents to say, what else could I be doing with my time if I didn't have to commit to being here for this period? Next slide. So our solution to what we saw with everyone kind of running around was we create a network. We create a network with equitable experience, safe, reliable, tech-enabled. We'll keep hearing safe and reliable because we are dealing with children. We're dealing with our most precious asset, and it's very difficult to just off board and say, here, take my child, I trust you. We want to make sure it's safe and reliable. We want to engage parents that already understand what it means to care for another individual. They have kids of their own. And we are empowering those families to find and locate shared rights amongst their community. It doesn't necessarily have to be the person that shares a teacher with your child, that sits next to them. This could be anyone within the system that's input their data can end up being a match for you. It's not locked down to someone within your parking, your apartment building or your cul-de-sac. This is anyone with an overlapping right. You guys might live on total different parts of town, but something in your route overlaps to the point where the system says, hey, you guys should meet. We're giving families the tools to build a network of trusted community members. You're not just matching with one family. Anybody that overlaps can become a match. You can have a pocket full of matches so that you can actually decide, Monday, I want to go with this family. Wednesday, I'd like to go with that family and mix and match, because now you've actually got options the same way you would if these were family members, if these were friends of the family, where you could just text them, hit them up and say, hey, are you free next Thursday? I've got an event, yes, no, and be able to exchange that way. Not a signed contract or 5-day a week commitment, always the same route, same start, same end. Real parenting is not like that. We have variables, we have seasons, we have different activities. Many parents have multiple activities going on. You may do one event from 4 to 7, and then another event starting at 7:30 on a different part of town. There's a lot of variables that go into it, and we want to be as flexible as the real life parenting schedule is. Next slide. So we're looking at equity for our communities. If you're in Chicago, you're aware, I think everybody's based in Chicago on the call, you're aware of the selective schooling and the magnet system of schools, where not everybody within a school may live in that walking distance. You can have situations where you're driving great distances to get your child from home to school because that's the best school for that child. That was the best option for that family. We're looking at serving those communities where, even if it is a walking distance from the school, maybe the family wants to do something immediately after school that's not within walking distance. Maybe they have an opportunity at a music program or at a sports program or at an arts studio that they need transportation to get from point A to point B, but the parent can't physically make that trip. Parent may not have a vehicle, may not be able to leave work, may be on the other side of town, maybe have a job that requires travel. And we want to give access to those families. We want to make sure that each child has access to the enrichment activities that we had access to growing up that shaped Donald and ours, professional lives that we mentioned earlier. And then we're also looking at neighborhood safety. Growing up within a city where the statistics can easily lean to having on the other side of the news, we want to make sure these kids have access to positive, enriching activities and that they're not left out there to become a statistic just because they had nothing else to be involved in. Right. So as we're pitching these these points to businesses, and we came up with this sheet of our three main points. And this applies even if you do not have children, if you're not thinking from a parent point of view. This is sort of the why our concept is gaining so much momentum. And those 3 points are trust, building community, and then also giving back to community. Trust, we talked about it a bit earlier, where there's 2 tiers of the match system within PiggyBack. One is your routes physically overlap. So the system is going to say, hey, family A, you should meet family B. Once there's that match, there's an extra step where their families are going to screen each other and they're going to meet in person. Think of an eHarmony, where you're going to have a first date. And now you're sitting there, what is happening? Where you're going to sit and ask questions to become familiar and become comfortable. You're a family where you have allergies. If you're a family where there's any medical need, if you're a family where there's food requirements, where there's special conditions, you know your child, you know how they get in certain situations. You want to be able to test and interview the driver. Just because PiggyBack says you guys should ride together, that's not the final straw. We're not just sending a blue sedan to your house. We're sending someone for you to screen so that you can find out how it's going to work. Hey, I need you to grab what you need and step out. So that's that extra piece of trust, because the parent is able to screen the match before anything starts. The building of community, mentioned before, parents are too busy on the phone, on the computer, in the parents' room, catching up on emails, and we don't take the opportunity to meet the parents of those peers that our children have. Within the classroom, it may be, let's all come together to fight this one major issue, but once that major issue is down, we go back to our regular class. It's draining to be all completely open to all members of school, parent community, they're open to the sports community. We just don't have that type of energy. But if we knew the 1 or 2 people that it would make a lot of sense to build with, because we have this overlap, we could focus on that relationship and we could become good friends with them, and we could get to the point where we can actually create a community of parents instead of just people saying hi and bye in the parking lot. And that's another of our major big rocks that we want to focus on. The third piece, where this is a for-profit company, but we also want to focus on putting money into, literally putting money into the small business and even large business and large organizations, youth programs, such as the YMCA, such as the dance studios, the baseball leagues, the soccer programs, any ride that originates or terminates within what we're calling a community partner. And all that is a youth organization signing up on our website as a partner. Any ride that originates or terminates there, at the end of the month, we calculate how much profit we've generated from those rides, and we donate a portion of it back to that facility. So we're encouraging those facilities to spread the word, to have parents, to recommend that parents use us, because we're reducing car traffic, we're encouraging those parents to get to know each other, and we're bringing families who would have not had access to that activity into the fold because of these measures. So we want to pay them back. We want to put more money into those communities and have that as another generation of revenue generation stream for those facilities. Next slide. So these are the 2 slides that money people like to look at, the big picture money people. And they ask, why would this work? We're creating a Venn diagram between 2 existing markets that are rapidly growing. Everybody's familiar with the 2 leading rideshare applications on the phone, the Ubers and Lyfts, and the money that they're bringing in is staggering. They're racking it in. Even before COVID, the growth rate 19% compound over a year, and the projection is that the global market is going to go from 60 billion to 222 billion within an 8-year span, 7-year span. We want to ride some of that way. We want to create some of that, because now we're talking about not just getting from point to point as an adult, but tapping into a portion of people that have to do this drive. When my daughter got accepted to the school that she's at, my oldest daughter, we looked at the map, it's 17 miles from our house. She's going in kindergarten and is likely going to be there for 9 years. That's driving 34 round trip miles every day for 9 years. And that's a commitment that I said yes to with no question, because that school is worth it to us. Families are committing to these drives and dedicating themselves to getting their kids back and forth, even when they're outside of the school bus range, and they see the value in a lot of these different opportunities. We're trying to change the mindset of the American community. There was a point when we were in our youth. I told the story about when my football coach used to drive me from home to practice because he lived near us, and I would be late when I took the public bus. He said, Ish can't be late. We need him. We got to make sure we develop him, so I'll give him a ride. Those types of commitments, the types of carpools that we have with some of our teammates and friends and family, they would help us develop into be the leaders that we became, because they understood the importance. Our parents understood the importance of leaning on these families and friends. 20% of Americans used to commute in the 80s and 70s. That's down to 10%. It's just not as prevalent anymore. And we're looking for ways to increase the trust, to increase the commonality, to normalize giving each other help, helping each other out. 77% of the US commuters, adults, they drive to work alone in the vehicle. That vehicle sits in a parking lot until that person is done with work, and then they ride home with that one car. That's a commodity. That's a potential ride for someone who does not have access to a school bus. Family can't afford to pay for them a private ride to get back and forth to a youth facility. And we're looking to capitalize on that. The biggest piece when it comes to the rideshare market, monthly, the users for Uber, the largest of the rideshare companies, the users have doubled between 2016 and 2019. So as it grows, it's already big, but it's growing substantially. Of those users, 37% of them, over a third, are between the ages of 16 and 24. Those users will be the parents within the next 10 to 15 years. So the fact that we're tapping into something for parents to utilize, and they're growing up from the age of 16, when you first get your driver's license, you never knew a time when you couldn't access transportation on your cell phone. It's a commonality. Right now, as a 39-year-old, I'm trying to convince my friends to think differently, to convert them to this mentality. A lot of these customers will have already been raised with this mentality. And that's the Venn diagram that we're trying to carve out here for ourselves. So that's the first market. The second market that we're looking at is extracurricular activity. While I shop Chicago Park District, now pay $34 for a soccer session for 45 minutes on a Sunday because I'm cheap. There are families out there who are going all out and spending money on their children because they know the value in extracurricular activity. They know it can lead to access to some of the most important jobs, access to some of the most important colleges, scholarships, notoriety, fame, all of these different confidence, self-confidence, building that inner child up as a well-rounded individual. Music, arts, sports, writing competitions, anything outside of the classroom that can have a chance to build up their psyche, there's money and value to that, and parents are paying it when they have the ability to. That's just gonna keep growing. There's more access that we can provide. Maybe the family can't afford to do the activity, but they can't afford the activity and the transportation there. We want to help out with giving a low cost opportunity for them to get their child back and forth so that they can have that access to those programs. Right? So people want to know, how do we make money? So there are two versions of our customers. Customers are all families, adults that have some type of child or access to a child, guardian of a child. They have in their household or in their family structure a child that needs to get a ride. One customer is willing to offer one of the seats, at least one of the seats in their car for one of the rides that they already execute, already operated ride. I talked earlier about the 21-mile trek that I make to drop my son off and my daughter and my other. I have a designed route that I do every morning, starting at a certain time, ending at a certain location. I would offer up that route into the system and say, I've got a 7-seater, 2 of my seats are open. If anyone along that route wants to get picked up, I would get matched with any family that's put in a request for a route where that route lays along my route. I can absorb that route into my route without altering the duration, without making it much longer, without making it much take much time. I can take that route into my route. We would be recommended to speak to each other. This is live on the website, how the users would enter their data. You start with the location, and you would put the address of that location. And then the next step, after entering at least 2 locations, you will go to your route, and you would actually build a route where one of those locations is your origin and one is your destination. And as you save that route into the system, it becomes the building block where you can build your scheduled routes. So now that you have an origin and a destination, you can either commit that route to an offer or commit that route to a request. Maybe 2 days a week you want to offer the ride, but there's 1 day a week where you're in court, or you have an obligation, or you just want to take that day off because you can work from home. That day you might use that same route to do a request. Ask another one of our PiggyBack members if anyone's offering that route, and can you pick my child up along that route? When you submit for the route offer or the request, we're going to let you pick the day of the week. We're going to let you pick the time of the day. We're going to let you specify the seat belt situation, because this starts young. So we're looking at our daycare where we sent our girls. They started taking children as young as 6 weeks old. Parents that are out of maternity leave, out of paternity leave, they have to get back to the office. They give their newborns to the daycare. It's possible this could be a benefit for that family with the newborn. Should that interaction between the requesting family and the offering family go well and everyone passes the test, let's do it. So we're going to ask for your car seat style. Maybe there's a car seat within the requesting family that they can lend. Maybe the need is for the offering family to have that car seat already. The estimation cost of the trip, this is the most used web page on our website by statistics. Most parents want to know upfront, what's it going to cost me to do this ride? And we built a system where they can put in their origin, their destination. This is public. You don't have to join the website to see this. And this feature alone is one of the main reasons that people keep signing up. Got, I think, 340 members at this point. And the prices are so low that they're just like, any other system is 3 times this. How do you all pull it off? How do you all pull it off? Pull it off because we're not paying drivers to do this. We're taking people that are already along that route, and we're offering them a portion of what the requesting family is paying. So while the requesting family may have a ride that costs 10 points, PiggyBack will absorb 5 of those points. 5 of those points will go to the offering driver. And those points are good for the offering family to request the ride themselves. So we're trying to pay them and take some time off. You've worked and earned these points. Now you can send your child without paying for the points. And that's where our revenue stream comes in. We usually get questions right about now. So if you guys are quiet, you either understand it immediately or you're really multitasking and not listening, which is cool. Do the same thing.
Ask the question. I got a question. Okay, so just so I'm clear, it's not necessarily pay, but you're earning points almost like airplane miles in a way.
Exactly.
to gain enough points so that when it's your turn to ask for a ride or request a ride for any reason, instead of you having to now pay in on the points you already paid in on or paid period, you're going to redeem what you've already put into the system, almost
Exactly.
like a co-op, a food co-op.
Exactly. And if
Okay.
we want to think of some families who may not be able to ever drive, may not have a vehicle, or the timing just might not work out, they would be directly paying for points anytime they want to make a request. But that family that can flip-flop and say, I can drive some and then I can request some, they may have a net zero situation where they only spend the points that they earn. And this is our original model. This is what we launched in August. And since then, we've been looking at some different marketing and then doing some different focus groups. We're modifying this soon to have incentives other than use your points just to request rides, because there's families out there who don't mind doing the drive, who aren't necessarily looking for that time off. And that's where we're partnering with retail partners to say, okay, you're raising kids. You spend money at Target, you spend money at Southwest Airlines, you spend money on gas. We're gonna offer you deep discounted fuel, restaurants, groceries, Target points to redeem your points for those retailers, places where families already spend money. So that way it's dangling an incentive in front of the parent who said, you know, what's in it for me if I don't really mind doing the drive? Well, get some value up. Let us know where you spend money as a family, and we'll help cut into that budget, because we want to tie with those retailers and say, hey, look, PiggyBack has a whole host of families in this area. We can show you the demographic that they're requesting, where they're driving. You've got stores there. We can direct them your way, and there's value in that as well. So that's another added revenue stream for the business.
And it's purely on the mileage, right? So like I was just thinking about unknown traffic delays or something like that. You may get into that a little later. That may just be a bit more too logistical, but
Yeah.
how does that really work?
So that's come up from the very beginning with families that are familiar with Uber. What you see is not always what you get, depending on the situation and circumstances of the time that
Right.
the starts. Our commitment is that when you put your time in, the date and the time, the Google algorithm uses historic travel times when it calculates how long this is going to take. If it turned out to be really bad weather, if it turned out to be there was an accident and it ended up being twice as long, this number is not going to change, because that driver committed to that amount, that requesting family amount. We're going to stick to what was agreed upon at the time of the agreement, and not necessarily stretch the cost to say they sat in traffic, there was a flat tire, the route really cost this. We're going to stick to what was committed at the time of the event. The only thing we do fluctuate is peak time and non-peak time. We've got a calculation that says for the distance traveled and the time, that was a very quick ride, so this must not be rush hour. And our prices vary a little bit depending on rush hour versus non-rush hour. But you can play with the pricing tool and see exactly what you would pay, because we want to be upfront with parents as they budget this out. This isn't a one-time ride where you're just going to be like, okay, I can splurge and pay the $60. This is, you want to know in scale, does this make sense? So we're giving you what the amount would be every time that you're going to.
Got it. Thank you.
I have a question about insurance. What is like the minimum insurance requirement for drivers?
So when we register a driver, the two things we're looking for are three things actually. We want to get your existing auto policy. We want to make sure that, you know, certain things are in there, certain liabilities. We want to get your vehicle registration. We want to make sure you at least have a vehicle, and if there's a household with both of the vehicles, we want both of them registered, because that's a representation of the company. If you show up with the vehicle that hasn't passed emissions test, that's not registered, we don't want that reputation. So we're going to screen for your vehicle and your existing auto insurance up front. What we're working on now, the rules for major auto insurance policies, they used to cover carpool insurance up until about 2 years ago when we were doing the research on this. you can add, as an individual, no company, you can add carpool insurance to your existing personal account for about $15, $25 a year. That's changed with a lot of the litigation that's come against the major rideshare companies. They don't offer those anymore with the large Allstates and State Farms and Geico's. So what we're doing now, there's a way you can, as an Uber driver, get Uber car insurance. There's a way as a Lyft driver, you can get Lyft car insurance. We're working with a private broker to find us someone that will sponsor PiggyBack insurance, even though we are a startup. So even though we're not big enough, voluminous enough for us to make a dent into the big Allstates and State Farms, we will be able to be covered by somebody initially, as I drive for this particular company with carpool. And the notion is, as an Uber driver, you have a shift. You're on duty for these hours per day. With PiggyBack, your child is only going to be in the car when you're operating it. We're only asking for 10, 15, 40 minutes if you're driving every day per day. So the premium shouldn't be what it would be for an Uber driver. It should be less, but then there's also the notion if you got somebody's child. So we're waiting to see what those numbers come out to be, but we have an estimate baked into our financial budget of what it would cost us for a premium to offer that insurance. We want to make sure people feel comfortable on top of their existing insurance that as part of this network, we have a coverage program that needs specified for our particular business needs. Good question. So the way it works, we just kind of walk through the website, so you can see that one. Competition. As we put this together within our business plan, lawyers and different people, business strategists, they wanted to know, like, who are you competing against? The real answer to that is we're competing against the way we think about driving right now. We're really going after changing a mindset, but the businesses that have been created as far as transportation for kids hire drivers of different affinity groups. Some groups may be retired police officers, people that have trust within the community. Some people may be retired teachers. Some people may be, we hire nannies, but the focus is it's a different flavor of a hired driver, and they're putting them in a logo shirt with a sticker on the car, a wrapped card, they're identifiable. Your child is riding with this company, and there's a premium for that. A lot of them will start at a base price of $15 before they even calculate how far and how long your ride's gonna be. As you saw with Donald's clicking through the samples there, our average ride is gonna cost a family member about $10. The average request that we have in the system right now is about a $10 ride. Some are cheaper, some are more, but a lot of the families will be able to tap into these resources over committing to one of these private car companies, because they have to consider vehicle maintenance and their insurance and what the driver is getting paid even when they're not riding with the person, like what an off day looks like for their drivers and a lot of different things like that. Since we're just exchanging points for existing routes that people operate, we're not putting people in the field to operate these rides. So there's a different pricing model that we have, and we have an advantage in our minds over the competition. So we talked about changing the narrative, getting people to kind of understand that there is potential to empower parents to take this upon themselves and say, we know transportation can be better and we can be part of it. It's not solely hitting communities where they have enough disposable income to say, well, we're just gonna pay for a safe, reliable service that we know of, that we know our neighbors are using, that we see around. And we have that imprint in our head that this logo is reliable. We're at a lower price point, so we can hit more communities. We can consider ourselves, going after some of those families that would not have an alternative. The alternative would be, you're just not going to do that activity. You're not going to be able to go to that program. Maybe a sibling can go, but we can't afford both of them. And we're trying to change that to give everybody the access that they deserve. We're not assigning random drivers. We're not passing the risk to the child, because there's that situation where you're sitting down with the driver and with the requester, and you're meeting family to family. Maybe the child doesn't feel comfortable, even though the parent feels comfortable. We can have all of those workout sessions before we commit to the ride. It's not a chance of who's going to show up. The person showing up is the person that you. We're prioritizing investing in the community, dollars as well as resources. You know, we want to make sure that there's a connection between the baseball program and the dance program. They could feed off of each other. When one works, the other one works. And it impacts housing, it impacts safety, it impacts future jobs. Like, there's a lot of community development that this touches directly and indirectly, and we're focused on it. That's intentional. We're building stronger family networks. So now there's not the pockets of families that talk to each other because they have familiarity outside or social groups outside of the school. Now we're building bonds between maybe an 8th grade family and a 2nd grade family outside of PiggyBack. They wouldn't have had a chance to get to know each other. And we're investing that money into the local businesses when they join up as community partners. All of these sort of milestones are ahead of us looking to profit as a company, but they directly lead to the reason why we're generating a lot of interest, because we're touching a lot of these sectors that they have the people working at the ground level, but there's not a real incentive financially for people to get behind it in a lot of situations. The fundraising is a hard task because it's seen as such a daunting task. So now we want to say, okay, what we're doing is actually helping you directly. Right? So that wraps the first section of the info part. That's who PiggyBack is, how we work, what our goal is, what our vision is for the near future. We've got some time for questions now. If there's anything that popped up, anything's got you scratching your head, comments, anything like that, let them out.
I have another one, Ishmael.
Yeah.
Is there some type of contract with the drivers outside of, understanding their information, insurance, things like that? Like,
Sure.
and I'm coming from a standpoint of, they sign on to drive these particular routes, say for whatever reason, a parent, signs on, kind of sees a similar route, but then approaches them offline, so to speak.
So, and we got this question from the beginning. We used to pay for a cleaning service, and the cleaning service would have a rotation of people who they'd send to the house depending on who's available. When we called the company, the cleaning person would receive our call on like a encrypted number, so they couldn't directly contact us. We couldn't directly ask for their information because it was like, we don't want you to undercut the company. Naturally, people say, if you want my number here, you can't prevent people from, taking a liking to people and saying, let's do this outside. We don't hate on that. We encourage the community building to the point where you don't need us anymore. We do offer, if you want to schedule with us, if you want to use us for the reminders, for text or email reminders, just to organize. You've already got your person, but you want to organize through us. We offer that. There's some families out there who maybe feel like they're being one-sided. You never do the driving, I have to do all of it. So we're going to try to lean on them to say this is a way to organize what you've already got going. But we can't prevent people from saying, I made this great match, now we're not going to use the system. What we're relying on is, if you like the match that you made, something in your life is going to change. There's going to be a change to the season, a change to the sport, a change to the school, a change to the job situation. Now you're dating somebody that lives on a different side of town and you're waking up there. Whatever's going on, when there's a change, we want to be where you come back to find a new match because you trusted the match that you found before. And that's kind of what we mean. We're not going to be strict and say, we don't want you guys sneaking around behind our back or driving each other. But that contract, that waiver, the insurance, all of that stuff is only covered if it was a route that was scheduled through.
Yeah,
So we do
exactly.
have legal documents. Once you've agreed to commit to the drive, there is a waiver. There is, language in the contract that says, committing to this, it's your own will, and it's all of these different insurance related, coverage related, liability related language that covers you for that particular ride if you are sanctioned and scheduled. Good question. And I don't think I touched the background check. So just to become a driver within the system, there is a background check for the drivers. There's a national level background check for criminal activity. There is a motor vehicle screening, so speeding tickets, accidents, DUIs, all of that's going to come up. We have a partnership with goodhire.com, who is an HR screening company. When people are looking to hire the workforce, they go hire up the HR department of Good Hire, and you can pick and choose the screenings that you want to do. We chose criminal background, both national and local at the county level. We chose sexual registry database, and then we also chose motor vehicles driving involved. We wanted to scrutinize as much, at least as much as the CPS teacher is scrutinized to be in a classroom with the children. So we make sure we crossed all of those off. And then we also added the motor vehicle driving involved. Okay.
And then you kind of touched on like when things change, whatever like that. In regards to maybe say last minute cancellations or something like that, is there like, support to try to get that person matched up to someone else, or are there like backups assigned or anything?
So with the numbers so small right now, we don't have it in place yet. If there's a cancellation, what we typically see is, you're at this point, you're communicating through email or text. You're just saying, hey, look, something came up. I can't make it.
Right.
That's the heads up that we're expecting. As soon as you know, let the person know. But there's not necessarily a penalized state. I just got a notice that there's a COVID outbreak at the school. Luckily, we're not, but immediately when that happens, people stop driving. So we know the environment going on right now is gonna be a variable. This is requiring flexibility, and we feel like we have that flexibility built in. So there's no penalty if life comes up. We will ding the members that don't give the heads up. 8:15 comes around and your son is still sitting in the living room. It's like, you can't.
Right.
And we need people that would treat this as if it was their own child, and we need that heads up. The last thing we want is for somebody to ruin the reputation because they're not trustworthy.
Right, exactly. Okay, thank you.
So if that's it on the questions, again, you can come up with a question on this segment once we get into the investing. What I do want to give an opportunity for you to move around and stretch if anyone needs it. If I don't hear that you need it, then we can jump into the next part, which is strictly on the investment side. This is where you unmute if you have to.
I'm good.
Keep rolling. Y'all are a good bunch. So when we were coming up with this idea, we're totally self-funded to this point. Everything we've created, the technology, the website, the slides, the decks, the strategy, everything is just, Donald and I working through this. And we got to a point where it's like, okay, we've launched, we're getting traction. The next move is going to require some money, and money that we aren't looking to sell our houses or, sell our children yet. So we come to the point where we're looking to raise money. As we're researching the different ways to raise money, a lot of it is go straight to the big people with the big bucks, and they'll loan you this, and they'll invest in this and invest in that. And we're looking at millionaires becoming 1.1 heirs. And it's like, okay, they'll get their money, they'll invest in multiple things in their lifetime, but we wanted to be able to give people in our community, in our network, our friends, our family, we wanted to give them opportunities at equity where a lot of us don't get offered these opportunities. I've never been approached to have equity in the company, and I don't know if I ever will be, but I wanted to make sure, as this is a community resource, that we offered it to the communities that it's serving. Become a shareholder, have a piece of this as it grows. And when we came up with the idea, we had no idea if it was possible, but it was just something we wanted to focus on. Then we had a big conversation one weekend about how we wanted to do it. People are kind of suggesting we go this way and that way. And it's as if Donald's phone was listening in on our conversation, because here's LinkedIn with a website for a company that does exactly what we're trying to do. Equity crowdsourcing allows us to go out to the public and have them invest in the smallest amount as we set, and they can get a share of the company. And when we found out about that, it was both worlds colliding. We can get the investments that we need, and we can make sure that those shares stay within the people that we know, because we're targeting them first. This is not something we're mass marketing out, that we're sending to the venture capitalists and saying, hey, you guys, this is a future company that's going to be big. You guys can get in early. We're telling that to our individuals, and you guys can forward it to your individuals to make sure everyone gets a chance if they want in on it. And then if we don't hit the marks that we need to hit, we can go out to the people with big things. We're trying to avoid that this early on. So there's a couple of numbers that are important. Minimum requirement is $250 if you want to buy into the equity. The reason why it's so low, typically these types of investments would be $25,000, $50,000 buy-in, something like that. You have to have a certain net worth in order to get equity in a startup company. You have to have a certain annual income level to get equity in the company. But because we are partnering with Seed at the Table, they are a broker with SEC accreditation to allow us to allow non-accredited investors to get a piece of the pie. They have done the paperwork. They have the structure for the investment where they're making sure you're not giving your last $100. It's like, okay, they've got enough in the bank where they can afford this amount. Making sure you know the risk of investing is making sure we are doing our part and doing the right documentation. We have our paperwork in order, and all of that is on this link or Seed at the Table. We want to make sure we're doing it right. They make sure they're doing it right. And as a result, these new laws within the last couple of years allow us to share these seed investments with any individual, regardless of their income. So the rich are going to get richer because they're going to have the majority of the pie. But this gives us at least a little spice, everybody that takes the opportunity to invest with us. So go back to the slide, unless you want to walk through the site.
No, I was just scrolling while you were talking, so that people can see around the page, but we can get into the slides.
Gotcha. So what we did was broke out a roadmap of where PiggyBack is today and where we're headed as far as investing. We highlighted 4 different stops along the roadmap. Where we are now is the green, friends and family round, and then there's market traction, and then a Series A price round, and finally expansion to a national brand. And timeline, it's rough right now because it's so early. We're thinking probably that red mark within a 5-10 year span. It could be earlier, but we want to focus on the green today. And where we're starting is PiggyBack is an idea, a hobby, a pastime that we're putting effort into. We're self-funded. We've got some media traction, a lot due to the school bus driver shortage at the beginning of the school year. Getting support from left and right, people putting their thoughts together on how they can introduce us to organizations, how they can have us at the table when it comes to different type of development planning meetings, who we need to know at district level, at city levels, at town levels, at state levels, lawmakers, grant writers. A lot of people are just like, oh, this falls right into this and to that. I kind of liken the company to a Lego block, and the structures that we can build with the Lego block are endless. When we introduce what we're doing, because it hits so many different aspects of the community, there's a piece that belongs in a lot of different conversations. That's exciting as a co-founder, and it should be exciting as a shareholder, potential shareholder, the places that we can go. So what we need right now is support. We need people to sign up, because as the membership grows, people take us more seriously. The brand gets recognition. We need more driving members. Very lopsided. A lot of families are requesting, particularly because that price is so nice, but we're not attracting the parent groups. And that's one of the reasons we're looking at these retail incentives. What can we dangle in front of people's faces to say this is worth not going out of my way, taking another child into the backseat. You know, a lot of people that are saying, you wouldn't want me, I'm not on time. You wouldn't want me, I don't enjoy driving my own. And we want to shake those mentalities to say the benefit is worth it. We want you to share in the process with your parent network. You know, there's closed network, chat groups and private groups and text strings that we want to get our name into those streams as a trusted service. And that's something that we want to do organically. We want you to trust us first and then recommend. So these meetings, talking to the people that we know, that know us, that have seen our commitment and our dedication to families and our jobs and our endeavors, we want them to recognize that this is something that they see two dedicated people putting their work and time and effort into. And we want you to be able to invest in a piece of the pie as we grow. So the Friends and Family Round, what it looks like, started, I think we started late September officially. We began with these introductions to people to try to get these info sessions out, explain everything that we're doing. We've started in September and we're open through February 14th. So that's the time frame that people have to invest. So we're a little over halfway through our contributions can be as low as $250 and as high as $50,000. And we set those numbers. We don't want someone coming in and sitting on a lot of change that says, I want to buy out everybody. So we put that cap in, raising up to $250,000. And we're offering, in exchange for the investment, what's called a simple agreement for future equity. Let's say future equity, because as a concept right now, we don't necessarily have a true valuation, what's called a price valuation, which is what you see on Shark Tank, where a company says we've been valued at $7 million, evaluated at $18 million. We haven't hit that point because we haven't had revenue generating years towards that. We're still gaining traction and looking for it. What we can do is say, here's a contract that says, once we've had that price round, once the company has assigned us a value, you've got first in line shares for the company. You've already made your commitment that says you get a piece of what they price it at. So this is getting in early, and you get a premium or a discount is what they call it. We'll walk through the math on that a little bit later. And that money is going to help us because now we can take our concept and actually invest our money into making it a reality. And we've got some earmarked funds on where that's going to go and how that's going to be used. First things first, the lawyers get paid first. You know, just to be able to have the fundraising event, we had to pay a lot. In order to do the patent, you got to pay a lot. In order to do the contract, Erica asked about earlier, the disclosures, the agreements, everything, lawyers are getting paid. So a lot of that money that we're raising is already spent, and it's worth it. We want to make sure this is done correctly, above board, that everything's, you know, official. There's some things that we can Google and try to do ourselves, but we don't want anything coming back to bite us when we could have just went the extra step and said, hey, let's settle on a budget, set aside, make sure we're doing it right. There's people's lives at stake here, so we want to make sure everything's good. Another big piece is going to be the marketing side. So we've been in discussions with, next slide, we've been in discussions with a sales and marketing firm. We were supposed to have a meeting earlier today that got pushed to next week with vacation travel, but they're going to have a proposal out to us by next week. And we want to be able to commit to that to get started on finding our target group of parents and starting to craft together what the pitch looks like as far as commercials, as far as ads, as far as what are the incentives, what are our partnerships. The ones we have listed here are some of the suggested retail partnerships that we come up with based on our own professional relationships with the companies and our abilities to kind of and suggest that we might be able to throw you guys a number of parents that are involved and willing to share their cars and all these different aspects about these customers that are valuable to some of these retailers. And we want to make sure that we have a relationship with them as we grow, because these names are recognized. People see this as an incentive for growing their piggyback points, and it helps us out, it helps the retailers out. And that's the idea. So we're working with the sales and marketing team with these ideas to make sure that we have a well-crafted, they're offering us a money back guarantee. It's going to work, or we don't have to pay. So it's a lot of good things as far as that goes that we're looking to do with this initial bit of funding. Because without the drivers, this is all just a concept and nothing doesn't actually take place. The last piece that we're looking to do is upgrade some of the technology. And again, this was developed and encoded by just our hands, and we know we got some improvements to make. I taught myself website developing with this, the mobile website, desktop website, it's all me. We know there's some stuff out there that we can do better, that we can faster, that we can do a little better user experience, but that costs money. We didn't want to invest in that before we could prove that we were going to need to invest in that. So that was kind of by design that we would step it up once we got some funds associated. So that's the first phase, is raising the funds and what we've got the earmarked money for. And that grows weekly. We're throwing more numbers in there as we have more conversations. We're still pending on what our corporate car insurance is going to look like. So we have a rough number, but we don't have the exact contract in front of us. As that becomes more mature, we update the specs so that each meeting we might be able to speak a little more directly to what the costs are actually going to be. But we know there's cost in there, so at least know that these are our known knowns at this point. The next stop, after we've invested in these three sectors, is the market tracking. And that's where things start to grow. That's where our advertising is hitting drivers. Our name is known in the streets as parents are looking at applying for schools and who's going to go where and where you're going to buy a house. Piggyback is on their minds as far as, well, if we need transportation, we could always just piggyback. It doesn't matter that we're not living 5 minutes from the school. It doesn't matter that the kid tested into the school that's on the other side of town. It's the transportation is not there that comes for us. And with that, as our name is ringing in the streets, trustworthy, the profits start going up, the revenue starts going up. We hit a point where we're getting that traction and we're like, hey, look, we're being taken seriously, like we're growing. We can track our growth. We can tell what's working, tell what isn't working. And that's the point where a larger venture capitalist is going to start taking notice, and we can get to the point where we have a true priced round and a Series A round. And that will be the next step in our roadmap. So just for tonight's purposes, we won't go into what the Series A is, but we have, similar to the friends and family, we have a budget that we want to spend that large investment on. That's a different conversation, but it's part of the roadmap, so we can stop there. What we added that we want to walk through is, what does it actually mean when you invest your money for this friends and family round? Because there's this concept of future equity, we want to just do a quick visual of what it looks like when those funds are invested. Where's your money and what's it worth? So this is when Donald's done the math. And we're smart guys, but this is challenging math to try to understand. So just try to follow along to what he's done.
Yep. So let me know if you can hear the loud house in the background. That's a TV show. Hopefully the kids have the volume down. Please turn the volume down. Okay, thank you. So, okay, one moment. So from a crowdfunding equity perspective, I think it's important to note that when we talk about equity as equity, not like how much money am I going to get back, but equity as who has access to different type of investment engines, who has access to the revenues and the money available to even push ideas forward. From an SEC perspective, a friends and family round is not formal. But from an equity crowdfunding perspective, we can only do it because we've submitted formal documentation. Traditionally, a friends and family investment strategy is I borrowed money from friends and family that they may not necessarily need me to pay back. And given the money that they provided, if my idea is successful, they didn't necessarily buy any shares or any ownership of the company with that friends and family investment. They would still have to come back during a price round to purchase formal shares, which is where we get into this concept of the agreement for future equity. A agreement for future equity says that when and if we are formally valued by a commercial, I'll use the term commercial vendor, meaning someone who will ensure that we've done a full audit, someone who is bound by the guidance of FINRA and the SEC, is capable of making, multi-million-dollar investments for equity inside of an organization, knowing that they're looking either for a significant return on investment or some sort of exit strategy. That is what we're calling a priced round. But for us to offer equity up front is a little bit different. As Ish mentioned, Seat at the Table is a fairly new organization, even among themselves, where they are focused on encouraging and enabling primarily minority people the opportunity to invest early on so that they can get those significant returns on investment that are usually blocked because the definition of someone who is able to be friends and family, or someone who's allowed to accept, who's allowed to give their money in return for a return on investment, was traditionally $1 million in assets, $200,000 salary, which based on wealth gap and the rest of it in the United States, that usually blocks our friends and family. Okay, so now what we are doing is a SAFE with a $7 million cap with a 20% discount. The math is fairly significant because it's a future agreement. So at the moment, we don't have a valuation. So we can't tell you specifically that you'll receive 7% annual because we're not doing a traditional, I can't think of the other word, but a traditional lending or
no,
a note. We're not doing any type of notes because we don't want to take on debt. And we didn't want to go straight to the VC because we do want to make equity available to our peers.
And a little extra to that. So us taking on debt, we could have offered the same type of investment, $250, means that you all are loaning us money and then we pay back our investors with a dividend with a percentage profit. And then at the end of the day, we've paid you back, but you're no longer connected to the company. So we wanted to make sure that the investment didn't necessarily give you a small piece of profit, but actually gave you a share in the company. We wanted it to be not a loan. So that was intentional.
Yeah, and that has to do with longevity as well. Because we could, this is probably going into a little bit of detail, but Ish and I talked through this in detail over the course of a couple hours and a couple days actually. But from a longevity perspective, if we do the note and pay back the balance or the principal, then there's potential that that loan doesn't turn into the 30-40% return on investment. It would have just been 7% for 2 years, which is significant, but not terribly significant. But I walk through this table. So, I must say, right, that all investment carries risk, and all of these numbers are for education purposes only, because they are representative but hypothetical. And so what I would do is encourage you to look at the far right box that says return on investment and what that percentage may be as it relates to what the company was valued at during a price round, which is the box all the way to the far left. The box at the top, and we'll share, you have access to these slides. Let me do this. This is recorded, but also I just want to share one more time where this slide comes from. You can access this slide for your own review by going to See It at the Table, PiggyBack Network, and then under terms, there's a link here. And this is the document that we're walking through. So going back. So we put this together so that we could explain the numbers, but ultimately, these are the hypotheticals. If, and the reason, there's a reason for why we chose a $7 million valuation. From a valuation cap perspective, what that means is, even if we get valued above the cap, your shares are priced at a limit. That's important without going into too much detail, because we chose a number that's low enough such that if we actually hit our significant stride and somebody's like, oh man, this is this company is worth $20 million, $30 million, $40 million. The more we are valued at, because our cap is low, it would be the more, it would increase the number of shares that you get to purchase, even if the share price is significantly greater. And so as we walk through the table, for example, if the company were valued at $5 million, let's say 5 years from now, and you spent $1,000, invested $1,000 for your safe purchase, then based on the numbers where we're saying that today, hypothetically, each one of our shares is worth $1. If we're valued at 5 million, then that means that based on the valuation, the share is actually worth 71 cents. But you receive that 20% premium or 20% discount. So the number of shares that you could purchase with $1,000 is 1750. And that would then show a return on investment of 20%. If we are valued at what our hypothetical value is today, again, based on the valuation, the share would be $1, but because the discount applies, you would receive the number of shares that you could purchase at 80 cents per share. So therefore, you would get 1,250 shares, which again, the dollar value equity is 1,250, and it's 20%. That's 1,250 is 20% of 1,000. But where the cap comes into play is, if we are valued at $10 million, the dollar per share valuation is actually $1.43. However, you would get to purchase the shares at $1 per share. So you would still receive 1,000 shares because you have $1,000 buying at $1,000 at $1 per share. But because each share is actually worth $1.43, you have $1,400 in equity, and that then represents a 30% return on investment. And as this number increases above that $7 million cap, because it's capped at 7 million, which for this hypothetical number is actually $1 per share, the return on investment starts to grow significantly. And so I think we put in the number at 20 million and the return on investment was like 50 to 60% or something like that. So that's how it works. But again, these numbers are all hypothetical, but it's meant to show what a cap and a discount represents during a priced round. And we can go into detail on this call. And we're also open and free to have more personal one-on-one calls to talk about, go into more detail on financing. But from an education perspective, right, I would say, please feel free to also Google what a SAFE is and pay attention to what it means from an equity crowdfunding perspective to have access to the SAFE and where it came from and why it exists and why we chose it. We can go into those details, but we're encouraging people to do some research on the concept of investing so that it's an educational experience, so that if you want, right, given our conversation, yes, we want you to invest in PiggyBack Network, but after you've learned and become comfortable with this discussion, you may go out to seat at the table and invest in other organizations, or you may send the seat at the table link to your other friends and family, and yes, they may invest in PiggyBack Network as well. But just the concept of encouraging our community to be involved and a part of this investing circle and the investing community is another portion of what's driving us to build PiggyBack Network, but then also have these types of calls. So I'll pause there and open it up for any questions, any comments, any concerns. Please feel free to voice them.
Math always gets everybody.
You explained that well, and I'm definitely not a math person. The only question I have is, since these are all hypothetical figures, what in the best outcome, what are the numbers that you all think fit where you stand compared to other companies that are similar to PiggyBack?
So I can take a stab at that. One thing that we do have control over is when we pull the trigger to be evaluated. So while we were drafting this up, our goal is to generate revenue ourselves to reinvest back into the company. We don't want to sit with, a limited profitability and say, okay, we've made a couple of dollars, let's go after the big loan, let's go after the big investment. We want to be able to stand on our own feet and say, this is something that's valuable. Now we need that extra boost to get to the national level. And to do that, we're going to have to probably prove that we are in the 10 million, 15, $20 million range. So we can sort of control where we pull the trigger, which would put this chart at closer to the bottom, the 30% return on investment, than the top. There wouldn't be much of an incentive for us to pull the trigger at 5 million because we've got our eyes on going bigger than that. So that's one of the things that we can say from our planning strategy point of view. The other thing is we can't say how long it's going to take to get there. So these investments, the planning that we want people to do now, don't spend the money that you were going to spend within 2 years. Say I'm gonna need this back. It's no. This is you're in it until the activity happens, until we trigger it. And then even when we trigger it, now that share is baked into the company. So the bigger we get, the more you've got. And then I put this video out a couple of weeks ago about where an Amazon or an Uber seed investment stands today. And you may cash out when it's time, but you want to wait until it's nice and fat, if that's the plan for long-term expansion. So if you want to look at how these variables can be controlled, one thing us as the company can do is, tell you it benefits us to wait until the company's making enough revenue that we get that higher valuation than the lower valuation.
Yeah, and I would add, I'll add a bit of emotional context for those who know Ish, and I know you all don't necessarily know me specifically, but part of our friendship is rooted in our collective successes, and we keep pushing each other and driving each other forward faster. And so, from a success perspective, I'll say I expect PiggyBack Network to be extremely successful, but all investments are inherently risky. So when you're thinking about investing, what's most important is whether or not the concept has longevity. And from a industry perspective, my mom was a childcare provider for a number of years while I was growing up. And what I learned about childcare is that the people you trust your children with are the most important people in your community. And so, because communities are built around raising children, a solution built around supporting the people raising children will never go away. And so, from a disruptive perspective, we are very confident that there's so many different places where transportation touches a family and a family's decision, that that when we hit our stride, which could be in 2 years, it could be awesome. I'll just say it like that. So, like investments and ideas and who you're dealing with is always about whether you trust them at this stage. At this stage of the game, it's really about trust. But you also have to consider what's the industry and what's the potential for longevity inside of that industry and that idea. And that's why we showed the two market trends, is that rideshare is not going away, and extracurricular activities are a function of equity these days. Like people believe that if you put your kid in lacrosse, you have a higher percentage chance of going to an Ivy League school. If you teach your kid rowing or sailing or fencing, you have a higher chance of blank. Or even these conversations around leadership teams and most managers being college athletes. That entire conversation and culture revolves around what children are doing today. And from an equity perspective, the more children who we can provide a ride to these different experiences, whether it's a more competitive school or a different type of after school program, then we are changing the nature of their future, which will be invested in by the parent. So I would, how well will PiggyBack do? We think it will do great, could do nothing. But we are confident because of those different factors, not just because we believe in ourselves. So hopefully that was long-winded, but hopefully that helps.
All right, great questions. We are right at an hour and a half. If there are any other questions related to any of the topics tonight, this is an opportunity to get it out. These have been great questions. We think we haven't mentioned this, but we are using these opportunities to polish up on our own delivery as we speak it more frequently, as we become more comfortable with people that we know closely. We are preparing to speak this to rooms of strangers and, get up and present this to people that have no concept of what we've been doing. And we're sort of judging ourselves and critiquing ourselves along the way. So another heartfelt thank you for giving us your time and your ear. We definitely hope that you might be able to share this with your people and, get involved if you are a parent or adjacent to parents, and looking forward to the discussions on investments. I watch the ticker on probably a 7-minute rotation to see who else has contributed. It's a very lonely life because it doesn't change very often, but I have faith that people are just waiting till that paycheck comes in. They're just going to shower us with investments and everything will be great.
Well, thank you guys for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Appreciate it. And
Thank you all very much.
with
And
that, we will go ahead.
If I had a question or the comments you made about it's being lopsided now because people want their service but they don't want to drive.
Yeah.
If I had an idea on probably an incentive that wasn't on your slide.
Oh, bring it. What you thinking? Or if you want a one-on-one meeting, we can do that.
Either
too.
way, I know it's been a long night and everybody's a parent outside of myself, so I can.
I just gave mine a bunch of sugar, so they're gonna be. No, I'm kidding. kidding.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like some type of write-off, either whether it's a gas card or something that they have points towards as a driver that makes it feel like it's almost free to drive, because at least they're not, once you get to a point that they can have an insurance, that'll be awesome. But in the meantime, until it gets to that point, at least I have the PiggyBack card, gas card. So I'm still taking my route, but if I have to do something extra or if I have extra children this day, I have access to this card.
Yeah.
Or
that's that gas portion. we've got the most legwork done with BP as far as getting access to gas cards and gas stations. Possibly having when you go to the pump, they'll offer you those menu items. Do you want a car wash discount, all this different stuff? I'd like to see it if we could get a PiggyBack discount on the actual prompt of the gas station.
Or the app.
And they also have a digital app, BP Me or something like that. They've rolled out. Our technology to work with their technology, and that's where we're going to try to head with the conversation. So yes to all of that.
Okay, that's just something that came to mind as a way to entice drivers. And would you consider people like myself who are aunts and godmothers but don't have children?
Oh, so we didn't touch on that. So my sister-in-law, no children of her own, but great with kids. We have her signed up as a driver on our account. So once you have somebody that just wants to contribute, she can earn points for our family account where I can send my daughters with the points that she would go through the same background check, but now she's listed as a driver. When we go to offer a route, myself, my wife, my sister-in-law would be offering these routes based on where she's driving on an everyday basis. So yes, there is a way to tie with families that could use it, that could use the points to send their child. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank everybody. And great evening. And we return you to your regularly scheduled Thursday night.
Thank you. Have a good
Thanks
day.
Thanks.
Thanks all.